22 points. For NASDAQ, that is a gain of 2.7%. And again, for the Dow, up now by 1.9%. After earnings, Netflix down 2.6%. SnapShares up by 30%. Texas Instruments up by 3%. Among the companies reporting after the bell, Alcoa. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That, David Weston, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has announced that this Friday, some businesses in his state can open up again, including things like gyms and hair salons and bowling alleys, subject to social distancing restrictions. Some have asked whether this may be too soon. We welcome now Dr. Harry Hyman, professor at the School of Public Health at Georgia State University. So, Dr. Hyman, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your sense as an expert in public health. How do you judge whether it's too soon to open up?
Well, thanks for asking that question, David, because that's actually something I've been discussing with media locally in Georgia as well. And, I think there are some key things that need to be in place before you can feel comfortable relaxing some of the social distancing. There are a number of kind of pillars. One of them is testing. As you may or may not know, Georgia has actually been consistently behind the curve in terms of the number of tests performed and the ability to perform testing in a way that's accessible across our state. Just for some relative numbers, we've performed about 90,000 tests in Georgia. If we look at Texas, they've done more than twice that number. Florida, about 3 times that number. And in order to get your arms around the epidemic, you have to know how many people are out there, both symptomatic and asymptomatic. In Georgia, we haven't begun testing anyone without symptoms, and we're still struggling to do enough testing to test everyone with mild to moderate symptoms. So we really don't know what we need to know. The other thing we don't know is, about 30% of the population of Georgia is African American. We know, looking at data in Georgia and across the country, that African Americans are being disproportionately affected. In Georgia, we only have that data for about 50% of the cases so far. So again, a lot more information we need to know to understand where we are. The other thing that's critical is having adequate personal protective equipment. We've been struggling to have enough for frontline healthcare workers in hospital settings. Now we're talking about opening up not only medical and dental practices, but massage therapists, hair salons, fitness centers, where employees, for their own protection and people going those places, will need some of that same protective gear without a clear plan to source that. And the third, and I would say maybe most important thing, is we don't have the public health infrastructure in place. And what I mean by that is we in Georgia, maybe more so than the rest of the country, but probably also true for the rest of the country, has underinvested in public health for years. If we look at health spending, prevention and public health are about 3% nationally. As a result, we don't really have the infrastructure in place and the workforce in place that we'll need to go to the next phase. Once you start loosening social distancing, then you need the ability to have rapid case identification and containment with contact tracing. That requires very active boots on the ground, and we're in no place near to having that. And last, we have some surge capacity for hospitals in the metro Atlanta area, but as we saw with a horrible outbreak in southwest Georgia, in Dougherty County and Albany, Georgia, the rural hospitals have really been doing poorly over the last 10 years, in part reflecting our decision not to expand Medicaid. And as a result, they're really unprepared for what may be coming ahead.
Doctor, pick up for a moment on contact tracing as one specific instance, because they're doing this now, or at least trying to do up in the state of Massachusetts. Charlie Baker brought in Partners in Health and Dr. Paul Farmer to do that. What kind of personnel do you need to do that? There's a Rockefeller Institute report, I don't know if you've seen it, but calling for there to be a national COVID workforce to really do the contact tracing, saying we could need as many as 100 or 300,000 people nationwide to do this. Is that realistic?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is it's unclear right now what combination of boots on the ground and technology we'll be using. South Korea has used a lot of technology to help with tracing. Some of the things they're able to do there might be less acceptable from a privacy perspective in this country. But the example you gave of Massachusetts is a great one. And it's an example of a state that's being very proactive in their planning and ramping up public health infrastructure as they prepare for the next phase of containment. And their plan is to train 1,000 people. Based on our population, that would mean training about 1,500 people in Georgia. And we haven't begun to do that. We have a plan in place. The Commissioner of Public Health has reached out to schools of public health, including Georgia State University, where I'm on faculty, and asked us to identify graduate students who could work with the Department of Public Health. And we're doing that, but even across the schools of public health, that's on the order of several hundred, where what we need is at least 5 times that number. And again, they're only talking now about developing the training videos and preparing that workforce. Yet they're talking about loosening restrictions and opening businesses in several days.
So take us back to first principles, that is to say what the governor of Georgia, Mr. Kemp, is doing there. President Trump and his task force set out guidelines, these 3 phases in terms of bringing the economy back together. I thought that in order to get to phase 1, you had to have a decline in numbers over some period of time, I think 2 weeks or so. Is that the case in Georgia? Because I've heard conflicting reports.
Well, first recognize that the guidelines in opening up America again are essentially an 18-page PowerPoint. So lots of room for interpretation, and they have what they call gating criteria, which call for a 14-day downward trajectory in symptoms, cases, and hospital capacity. And if your question is, do we have a document?
Does Georgia have that? Yeah. The question is, do you have that in Georgia?
The short answer is no. We do not. And at the press conference a couple of days ago, the commissioner said that she felt confident that by the end of the month, which is the time that they will be, they're planning to do away with the shelter in place, that we would be there. So I think the critical point here is we haven't even achieved what I would say are very liberal gating criteria, and yet we're in this rush to start opening things up, which is a problem and a great concern.
Is the governor listening to public health experts?
Certainly not in the way that I'd like him to.
Okay.
And I think he's listening to other voices maybe more loudly.
Right. Sounds like that may be right. Okay, many thanks to Dr. Harry Hyman. He's professor at the School of Public Health at Georgia State University. That does it for Balance of Power for today. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage. During these challenging times, our commitment to providing you with the best mortgage experience remains. We understand that hardships may arise, and we're prepared to help. Mortgage rates remain near historic lows. If you think that now is the right time to refinance your mortgage, our home loan experts are available to help 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at rocketmortgage.com.
Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender. Licensed in all 50 states. NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Where in the world is the financial news you need?
Do you think that the Bank of England will actually follow through?
Where is the business and market information that drives your success?
This game of chicken is going to end.
And where will you find information on political events around the globe?
Is this going to have an impact on the Chinese economy?
Anywhere and everywhere you are.
Is America energy independent?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
The world's financial decision makers connect on the Bloomberg Terminal, sharing ideas, negotiating trades, and forming an influential network that helps power global markets. Isn't it time you join them? Bloomberg.com/professional.
Bloomberg Daybreak Asia.
How should investors be positioning?
We go there.
Let's talk about export numbers because they've been quite shocking. Korea, we saw Singapore, Japan too.
Tonight at 6 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
This is the Bloomberg Green Business Report. The Trump administration violated environmental law, according to a federal appeals court, when it tightened membership requirements for powerful EPA advisory boards. The decision is a critical victory for environmental groups and scientists who have for years denounced the Trump Environmental Protection Agency's policies. Advisory boards affected by the policy have advised the Trump administration on multiple major regulatory decisions since EPA issued the directive in 2017. An attorney for the group Earth Justice calls the decision a resounding win for science and a return to bedrock principles that EPA's decisions should be guided by the best available science and justified in a rational way. A three-judge panel of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit agreed with Physicians for Social Responsibility and other groups that the Trump administration has run afoul of federal ethics regulations. That's the Bloomberg Green Business Report. I'm Bob Moon.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Whether it's another day of market misery, pandemic emergency, or both, one thing will still go right.
We have the latest world and national news.
Karen Moscow and Nathan Haker bring you the most accurate coverage.
The White House is looking for additional ways to support the economy.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
We continue to watch equities around the world.
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine. Plus, global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from New York and New Jersey, streaming on YouTube. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020. It's Earth Day. I'm Carol Masser, along with my co-host Jason Kelly. And Jason, we've got stocks actually up after a couple of down days. Airlines, leadership, new stimulus, certainly front and center. And we've got a roundup of leaders to talk about all of that.
Well, and it's interesting to think about sort of this collision of sorts of earnings, maybe a little bit of optimism on the health side that we're starting to see. And as you say, more rescue financing coming from the government. And we've got it covered from all sorts of angles. A lot of leaders weighing in throughout the next few hours.
All right. First up, let's get a check on your top business stories. And really, let's get a check on that trading day. Here is Charlie Pellet.
Thank you very much. Here's what's going on. Green on the screen. Stocks halting, as you mentioned, a 2-day slide. Investors digesting the latest round of corporate earnings. By the way, we'll be hearing from Alcoa, among many other companies, after the bell today. Also, a lot of optimism about the eventual reopening of the economy. Oil rising from record lows. Let's begin there. West Texas Intermediate crude up now by 1.9%. Looking at an advance, actually up by 20.5% on WTI now, up $2.33 a barrel, $13.89. Brent up 5.2%, $20.33 for a barrel of Brent. Gold up 1.7%, right now higher by $28 the ounce at $17.14. The 10-year down 17.30 seconds with a yield of 0.62%. S&P up 62, up 2.3%. The Dow up 458, up 2%. NASDAQ up 228, up now by 2.8%. Lots going on. That is the latest from the market desk. I'm Charlie Pellet. Now back to you, Carol and Jason.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. This portion of Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by Commonwealth Financial Network. For the sixth straight time, J.D. Power ranks Commonwealth number one in independent advisor satisfaction among financial firms. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more. And coming up, as we mentioned, Carol, we're going to hear from the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. She caught up with David Weston. We're also going to talk to the chairman of JetBlue, a legendary investor who's worked all over the world, Henry Cornell. Also, a couple of CEOs, and I'm going to say it, and maybe you're going to be upset with me, the author of my favorite book.
I know. Actually, I believe it's the author of Alice's favorite book, but we'll talk about that. He's also doing some incredible work when it comes to individuals who have been incorrectly, wrongly incarcerated. So we're talking about Jason Flom. He also is the founder of Lava Records. So looking forward to see what he has to say. First up, though, let's set the Business Week agenda on this Wednesday. Kriti Gupta, is Markets Live reporter at Bloomberg News. She's back in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. Dave Wilson with us, stocks editor at Bloomberg News on the Access line in New Jersey. So, Dave, let's start with you. Set the tone, because we've had a couple of down days this week so far, but we've got a rally underway.
We sure do, and it's a pretty broad-based one as well. I mean, you look at the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, they're all higher. You know, technology stocks leading the way, which we've certainly seen a lot of over time. Energy companies doing relatively well, too, which we haven't seen, especially in light of what the oil market has been through lately. So, you know, a bit different on that score. Some well-received earnings reports. I mean, you've got the biggest gain in the S&P 500 for Chipotle Mexican Grill. Their numbers were out late yesterday. People like them. Similar story with Snapchat's owner, Snap. So you're seeing social media companies do well. Facebook has that going for them, plus the fact that they invested $5.7 billion in an Indian company trying to expand their business there. So, you know, put it all together. I mean, there's certainly a lot of positives to sort of counter the negatives that we dealt with the last couple days.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely a different tone, right?
Absolutely. And one of the big negatives, obviously, has been this oil trade. We've all been looking at it, trying to make sense of it. Kriti Gupta, come on in here. Give us the latest and also the necessary kind of why it matters to not just an everyday consumer, but an everyday investor, this move downward that we've seen in the oil market.
Sure. So what's been notable about this week, Monday, crude prices dropping into negative territory, a historic moment, of course. We all kind of know that happened. What's really important to note, though, is it happened